I was blacklisted from the time I was 22.
In 1951, Lee Grant earned her first Oscar nomination. 2 days later, her name appeared in a government book. She was blacklisted. The FBI tapped her phone and followed her everywhere. Her marriage fell apart under the pressure. She pawned her jewelry to buy food. For 12 years, she couldn't work in film or TV. Her income dropped from $75,000 to $4,000. She taught acting in secret and used fake names just to survive. By the time Hollywood let her back in, her youth was gone. But that wasn't the end of her story. At 99, she's still directing, and the truth about how she survived will blow your mind. Lee Grant was born on October 31, 1925, in Manhattan, and her real name was Lyova Haskell Rosenthal. Her parents were Russian Jewish immigrants who had escaped brutal violence in Odessa. Her mother, Witya, had fled with her sister, leaving behind family members who likely never made it out. They came to New York with nothing and moved into a small apartment at 148th Street and Riverside. Her father, Abraham, worked non-stop as a realtor and teacher, trying to keep the family afloat during the Great Depression. Things were so tense that even Abraham's own Polish Orthodox parents disapproved of his marriage to Witya, which made life even harder. Lee's age was always a mystery, sometimes listed as 1925, sometimes 1931, which was common in immigrant families who had no solid papers. But no matter what year it was, her talent showed early. In 1931, when she was only 4, she stepped onto one of the grandest stages in the world, the Metropolitan Opera. She played the kidnapped princess in L'Oracolo. Most kids her age were still learning to talk in full sentences, but she was acting beside world-famous singers. That performance led her to a scholarship at the neighborhood playhouse, which would shape the rest of her life. Behind the applause, her home was full of pressure. Her mother, Witya, had given up everything for Lee and pushed her into ballet, opera, and acting classes all at once. Lee wasn't playing like other children. She was performing, always performing. Her mother's expectations grew heavier with each passing year. One day, Witya even forced her daughter to perform in blackface at school, chasing applause at any cost. By the time Lee was around 10, her mother's mental health collapsed completely. After a terrifying suicide attempt, it was Lee who found her and called for help. That moment never left her. At 11, Lee reached another high point. She joined the American Ballet Theater, becoming one of the youngest dancers accepted there. But it didn't last. Her body began changing too fast. She grew taller overnight, several inches in just a few months, and in ballet, that can end a career. She became too tall to pair with male dancers, and everything she had trained for began slipping away. The family had pinned all hopes on her ballet dreams. With that door closed, they didn't know what to do. They had no money. Their Bronx apartment was tiny, and Lee practiced on the fire escape. Her father worked as much as he could, but it wasn't enough. They lived off New Deal programs. Sometimes Lee went to bed hungry. By the time she was 12, she was the one earning the money, acting, singing, dancing, while her classmates went to school. Her earnings paid for food, utilities, and rent. She missed out on a normal childhood, and it left scars she would carry her whole life. At 17, she changed her name to Lee Grant. She wanted to leave her past behind and fit into Broadway's world. In 1948, she landed her first real role in Joy to the World. Critics were shocked because she had no formal stage experience, but she knew how to survive under pressure. She had already performed in the Met Opera at 4 and trained under Sandy Meisner at the neighborhood playhouse by 16. Her mother had pushed her through ballet, opera, art classes, and even Juilliard after high school. In 1949, she auditioned for Detective Story. She was only 22, but didn't want the young girl role. She asked to read for the 40-year-old shoplifter instead. She based the character's voice on girls she'd heard on New York buses. She wore a size 18 brown jumper from another production. That bold choice won her the Critics' Circle Award and changed her life. She went on to train with Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, learning method acting based on Stanislavski's teachings. In 1951, she played the same role in the film version of Detective Story with Kirk Douglas. She was 25 and earned her first Oscar nomination. That same year, 1951, she married screenwriter Arnold Manoff. He was involved with the Communist Party, something she never truly understood or supported. They had met through one of his plays, but when Lee gave a eulogy at actor J. Edward Bromberg's funeral, blaming the government for his death, everything changed. 2 days later, someone handed her a pamphlet. Her name was in it. She had been labeled a communist sympathizer in red channels. She was blacklisted. At just 24, her Hollywood career ended. For the next 12 years, from 1952 to 1964, she was banned from television and film. She refused to name names before the House Un-American Activities Committee, a decision that cost her everything. Even before the blacklist, she had made waves in early television. In 1953, she played Rose Peabody in Search for Tomorrow. Every episode ended with her possibly poisoning the soup, creating suspense. Don Knotts played her mute brother. But that job ended too when a store owner in Syracuse mailed a postcard to CBS, calling her a communist. Just like that, she was fired. Advertisers didn't want controversy. Her film debut had brought her to Hollywood in 1950, where she saw a darker side of the industry. She experienced firsthand the sexism that ran deep in the studio system. Producers made inappropriate suggestions. Women made up only 20% of casts by 1930, down from 40% in 1920. Most of the power was held by 5 big studios: Warner Brothers, Paramount, MGM, Fox, and RKO. Lee refused to give in, no matter what it cost her. In 1952, she won Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival for Detective Story. But that award was buried under the weight of the blacklist. Her name was still tarnished. She couldn't work. She couldn't speak out. All she could do was wait. In those years, she found work where she could. Small theater productions, under fake names. Her performances stayed strong. Critics still noticed her fire. Her early Broadway days were marked by raw, emotional improvisations. At 17, she had shocked everyone with an acting exercise that unleashed something wild inside her. That moment, that spark, stayed with her. She didn't settle for simple roles. She always picked the hard ones, the ones with layers, the ones that hurt. Even in the 1950s, when she returned to shows like The Goldbergs, she faced more problems. She got equal billing with male actors, but earned much less. The pay gap was real. And when the Red Scare hit, shows with ethnic or Jewish actors became too risky for networks. They pulled the plug on those shows to play it safe. In 1953, she joined Stalag 17 on Broadway. That play became known not just for the story, but for what happened behind the curtain. The director, Jose Ferrer, was tough. He clashed with actors. Lee, trained in method acting and full of her own ideas, pushed back. Their fights became part of Broadway gossip, but it showed something deeper. Lee Grant wasn't going to back down from anyone. Lee Grant was just 23 when everything fell apart. It was April 1951, and she had just earned her first Oscar nomination for her role in Detective Story with Kirk Douglas. Everyone in Hollywood thought she was about to become a huge star. But before she could even attend the ceremony, her name appeared in a government report that listed people suspected of being communists. The reason was her husband, Arnold Manoff. A director named Edward Dmytryk told the House Un-American Activities Committee that Manoff had been part of the Communist Party. Lee refused to speak against him. She said she didn't even know about his politics and that it had always caused problems in their marriage. But it didn't matter. Her name was now in a book called Red Channels, alongside 150 others. She was blacklisted, banned from movies and TV, just as her career was starting. The fallout came fast. She had been cast in A Streetcar Named Desire, one of the biggest plays of the decade. But overnight, the producers removed her. She didn't even have time to argue or say goodbye. Her studio contracts were canceled without warning. One day she was the next big thing, and the next she was untouchable. People stopped calling. Projects disappeared. Kirk Douglas later said she had one of the biggest futures in Hollywood, and it was stolen from her. She was erased, and it all happened in a matter of days. The FBI started watching her. They tapped her phone. They sent people to follow her and listen to her conversations. Even when she was at home with her daughter Dinah, she felt like someone was always listening. Her marriage started falling apart. The pressure from the surveillance made everything feel unsafe. She couldn't trust anyone. She said it felt like dancing on the head of a pin, trying to live while constantly being watched. The fear and tension never left. By 1953, things got worse. Both she and Arnold were completely blacklisted. They had no income. Manoff had to write under a fake name, Joel Carpenter. And even then, he made very little. He wrote for shows like You Are There, Naked City, and The Defenders. Lee pawned her jewelry just to buy food for Dinah. They lived in a small building with other blacklisted families, trying to support each other. Lee took small acting jobs under fake names and taught acting lessons for cash. She made just enough to get by, but it was nothing compared to her old film income. Her entire prime was gone. She called it her ingenue years, the years when she should have been a rising star. And they were spent in poverty. The stress hit her brain. After her interview with the House Un-American Activities Committee, she developed memory problems. She couldn't remember the names of close friends. That damage never went away. Even decades later, she still struggled with it. She later said, writing her memoir, I Said Yes to Everything, forced her to finally look at the pain. She realized it wasn't just the blacklist that broke her. It was the mental damage it caused, the fear, the silence, the shame. It had rewired her brain. To survive, she turned her apartment in Manhattan into a small acting school. From 1951 to 1963, she taught 15 to 20 students a week. She charged $25 a session. Her first student was Sandy Dennis, who later won an Oscar. Lee told her students everything about casting couches, corrupt executives, and how the blacklist destroyed people. Her honesty made the class legendary. She earned around $300 to $400 a month, barely enough to care for Dinah. But it kept them alive. Eventually, she was invited to join HB's studio, where big names like Maureen Stapleton also studied. Her marriage to Arnold Manoff finally collapsed in 1960. They had been together 9 years. He had 3 kids from other marriages, Tommy, Michael, and Eva. Lee had joined the Communist Party because of him, thinking she was standing by her husband. But she found out he was having affairs, even when they were struggling to survive. At one point, she was making just $200 a year from teaching. Their divorce was final in 1964. A year later, in February 1965, Manoff died of a heart attack at just 50. She always believed the stress of the blacklist killed him. In 1961, she started therapy. She was breaking down. Her sessions cost $45, 3 times a week, almost half her income. Over 18 months, She paid about $3,000, but she learned why she always said yes to powerful men. Her parents were immigrants. Her father was emotionally absent. She had always chased approval. Therapy helped her face her pain and separate her past from her present. It also planted the seed for her future work in documentaries on mental health. Even during the worst years, she didn't give up performing. From 1951 to 1964, she acted on stage. Actors' Equity protected blacklisted performers. She earned $55 a week, doing shows like Arms and the Man, Wedding Breakfast, and A Hole in the Head. She performed 6 nights a week, sometimes more. In 1965, she won an Obie Award for her role in The Maids. She also worked at the Actors Studio, where she learned directing. Her theater friends helped each other survive. They knew they were all in the same fight. By 1962, her income had dropped from $75,000 before the Blacklist to around $4,000. She was close to being evicted, so she went to Europe and took small TV roles in the UK and Italy for $500 to $800 per episode. She worked under fake names, in secret. She even got a facelift in 1963, hoping it would help her get roles by looking younger. But it all made her feel like a stranger in her own industry, like she no longer belonged in the country that had once embraced her. Her exile finally ended in 1964. Her lawyer did a favor for someone connected to the House Un-American Activities Committee. That was enough to clear her name. In 1965, she got cast in Peyton Place, playing Stella Chernak in 71 episodes. That role let her finally pour out everything she had been holding inside. In 1966, she won an Emmy for it. She was the only actor in the entire cast to win. Frank Sinatra came up to her and said, "You deserve it, kid." It was the first time she felt safe in Hollywood again. In 1967, she starred in the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier. Her role as Mrs. Colbert was emotional because she had just lost Manoff to a heart attack. When Poitier tells her that her husband in the film is dead, she used her real grief. She cried for real. The director and editor let the camera roll. That scene became one of the most powerful in the movie. It wasn't acting. It was her pain, finally let out. Later that same year, she appeared in Valley of the Dolls as Miriam Poehler, a harsh agent in the drug-filled world of Hollywood. She brought her real experience to the screen, how desperate and cruel the business could be. The film was a box office hit, even though critics hated it. Her performance felt real because she had lived through that same darkness. She married producer Joseph Fury in 1962. At first, people in the industry didn't trust him either. They thought maybe he shared Manoff's politics, but he stood by her and helped her rebuild. They had a daughter named Belinda. Their marriage lasted, giving her the stability she had never known before. By 1969, she earned another Oscar nomination for The Landlord. She played a racist Long Island mother, a shocking role given her own progressive politics. Critics were surprised she agreed to say such hateful things on screen, but she said she based the character on people in her own family, showing how racism could hide in plain sight. The performance showed she wasn't afraid to tackle hard roles, even if it made people uncomfortable. On March 29, 1976, she finally won an Oscar for Shampoo. She was 50 years old. Her speech stunned the crowd. She said, "I really must have wanted this. Otherwise, why would I wear an old wedding dress?" She had been lying about her age for years. When she came back to Hollywood in 1964, the mayor helped her change her birth year on her license. Her role in Shampoo was just 18 minutes long, one of the shortest performances to ever win an Oscar. But it meant everything. She said for the first time, she felt like she had no enemies. That same year, She was nominated again for Voyage of the Damned, playing a Jewish refugee. The story was personal for her. She was Jewish, and her family had lived through their own fears of the Holocaust. She acted in only 8% of the film, but her performance was powerful enough to earn another Oscar nod. In 1972, she won another Emmy for The Neon Ceiling. That film was the turning point. She started giving input on direction and story. It caused tension on set, but it proved she was ready for more. It was her second Emmy win, and it was the moment she started thinking seriously about directing. By 1977, she was 52, but still pretending to be younger. She was cast in Airport 77 as the bitter, rich woman who insulted everyone. Her role was a reflection of how older actresses were treated, cast as angry, forgotten women. One critic said her character getting punched was a brutal moment of full-on misogyny. It showed how harsh the industry could be to women past a certain age. In 1979, she was nominated again for The Swarm, but the film bombed. It had cost $21 million and made only $10 million. Critics called it one of the worst movies ever made. Grant was 53 and feared this flop would end her career again. So she pivoted. She stepped behind the camera and started directing. That decision gave her a second life in Hollywood. She would no longer wait for permission. She would create her own path. In 1980, something happened in Hollywood that no one saw coming. A woman stepped behind the camera and changed everything. Her name was Lee Grant. At age 55, when most actresses were being pushed aside, she did something bold. She directed her very first feature film, Tell Me a Riddle. What made it historic wasn't just the story or the acting. It was the fact that the entire film was written, produced, and directed by women. That had never happened before in America. The film starred Melvyn Douglas and Lila Kudrova, two Oscar-winning actors, and was based on a quiet, emotional story about an aging Jewish couple. But the real shock was that Lee Grant raised over $1 million to make it. That kind of money almost never went to women-led projects back then. And when the movie was finished, it wasn't buried. It was picked up by Filmways Pictures and even screened at the Cannes Film Festival during its Director's Fortnight. It also won Best Picture and Best Actor at the Edinburgh Film Festival. For many people, this was the first time they realized that women could lead a major film and succeed. Just 6 years later, Lee Grant broke another wall. In 1986, she won the Directors Guild of America Award for a CBS film called Nobody's Child. It was based on the true story of Marie Balter, a woman who spent 20 years locked in mental institutions. Marlo Thomas played the lead, and her performance won an Emmy. The film was emotional, raw, and brutally honest about how America treated people with mental illness. Grant's win made headlines because, in the Guild's 51-year history, no woman had ever won in that category. She was 59 at the time. She didn't just win as a woman, she won as an older woman in an industry that often forgets both. But none of this came easy. In 1975, she had won an Oscar for Shampoo. Most people would think that's the peak of a career. But for Lee Grant, it felt like a dead end. She was 48, and Hollywood had already decided she was too old for meaningful roles. That night, as she held her Oscar, she realized she was being slowly erased. She had already lost 12 years of her youth to the Hollywood Blacklist, from age 24 to 36, and now time was striking again. She even had to lie about her age, once going so far as to have dinner with the mayor of Los Angeles just to get 5 years removed from her license. It wasn't a vanity thing, it was survival. So she started over. She enrolled in the Women's Directors Workshop at the American Film Institute and made her first short film from a play where one woman speaks and the other stays silent. From there, she fought her way back, not as an actress, but as a director. In 1983, she directed When Women Kill for HBO. It was unlike anything people had seen on TV. She got access to real women in prison, including Leslie Van Houten from the Manson family. She showed stories that were ignored. Out of over 2,100 prisoners on death row, only 12 were women. She exposed how many of them had been abused for years before snapping. The film didn't try to excuse their crimes, but it made people see them as human. Then, in 1985, she did something even riskier. She directed What Sex Am I?, a documentary about transgender people. This was during the Reagan era, when even saying the word transgender on TV could get you hate mail. But Lee Grant did it anyway. She traveled across the country, California, Texas, New York, filming real people trying to live their truth. One review said her film felt like it belonged in the 21st century, not the 1980s. Another called it brutally candid. 5 years before Paris is Burning, Lee Grant had already opened the door. In 1986, she made Down and Out in America, another HBO film. This one tackled poverty under Reagan's policies. She showed farmers losing hundreds of farms each week in Minnesota. She filmed factory workers whose jobs were being shipped overseas, 3,000 at a time. She even received death threats. But the Academy noticed. The film tied for Best Documentary Feature at the Oscars. It became HBO's first Oscar win. And with that, she became the only Oscar-winning actor to also win an Oscar for directing a documentary. No one else has done that, even now. Her television work was just as powerful. She had already won an Emmy in 1966 for Peyton Place, and another in 1971 for The Neon Ceiling. That second one was about a suburban mother who walks out on her life. It wasn't the kind of story TV usually told. She kept getting nominated for Emmys through the 1980s and 1990s, including for her directing work. She wasn't just making good TV, she was showing what TV could be. In 1989, she directed Battered, a documentary about domestic violence. She interviewed both victims and abusers. She didn't sugarcoat anything. The film was used in classrooms, in trainings, and by lawmakers. People magazine said it proved she was one heck of a filmmaker. In 1990, both the New York City Council and LA County officially thanked her for her work. And in 1989, Women in Film gave her their very first Lifetime Achievement Award. But her most shocking moment came in 2023. During an interview, she casually revealed that she was 97 and a half years old. Born in 1925. For decades, she had told people she was younger. Even Wikipedia and IMDb had it wrong. She said the reporter didn't even react enough, so she had to remind them to act surprised. The truth was, she had started lying about her age when she came off the Blacklist in 1964. She was 39 then, but claimed to be in her early 30s. She lied to agents, casting directors, even friends. She once said she had to coach people around her to keep the lie going. It wasn't about vanity. It was about getting work. Studies later showed that women over 50 get 78% fewer roles than men their age. Her 2014 memoir, I Said Yes to Everything, told the full story of how she survived the Blacklist from 1952 to 1964. She refused to testify against her husband before the House Un-American Activities Committee. And for that, she was banned. No film roles, no TV. She worked in theater, took teaching jobs, and her husband wrote scripts under fake names. She said the trauma was so deep that she couldn't remember people's names afterward. It was like her brain blocked things out to survive. But she kept going. She said surviving in that time was like dancing on the head of a pin. As of 2025, she's 99 years old, still sharp, still active. Turner Classic Movies is already planning a big tribute for her 100th birthday on October 31st. She started on Broadway in 1951. That was 74 years ago. Today, she still posts on social media, rocking her signature gray hair and red lipstick, and she still holds the title of Hollywood's oldest living director.